As you go on this conscious journey of self-realization and realizing your nature as a creator, thus understanding your desire to manifest and materialize things, it's important that you understand not only consciousness, but also ego. Now, why is it that you should understand both? It's because both aspects of who you are represents the contrasts that permeate everything that we know about the universe. You see, the universe consists of opposites. Two things could be opposing, could be things that are just going the opposite direction. Ultimately, what it means is that one cannot exist without the other. And that, by definition, means to remain in balance or to create balance. So as you are on this journey, you must recognize consciousness as who you truly are and ego as your false self. Now, the question then is, if ego is the false self, why does it exist in the first place? What's the purpose? What's the point? Well, understand that consciousness represents that meta aspect of who you are, the beyond yourself, what you know to be yourself, right? It is the part of you that is infinite, everlasting, that is an extension of that grand consciousness, what we often call God. And as its opposite, your ego represents the part of you that most of us think is who we are, like our gender, our race, the ideals and morals that we were brought up with, and ultimately even our thoughts and emotions. But in fact, those are just byproducts of being in this physical realm. And this is why the ego is very important while we are here in this physical realm having this human experience. Because in order for us to have this human experience, we have to understand and recognize ourselves as individuals, and as well recognize your conscious self as oneness with all things. You see, remember, we're talking about the contrast of two things that may seem opposing, it may seem contradictory, but ultimately one does not exist without the other. In order for you to experience happiness, you must understand sadness. In order for you to experience joy, right, pleasure, sometimes you must experience rage or suffering. And so it is important to recognize that when you go through life and as you are experiencing certain things, they are simply parts of its polar opposite, right? Or you can say even the other side of the spectrum. So getting back to ego, it's important to recognize ego because ego has its place in this physical realm that you are existing in this world that we are existing in. Ego also creates a sense of a identity that allows you to have a particular experience throughout life. Say, for instance, me. I'm a male. I'm an African-American male. With just those things, I come with a particular experience as to how I see the world, how the world interacts with me. And using my consciousness, I have to put it in perspective that, yes, this is my experience, that the world is essentially projecting toward me, right? And other people's reality is being projected towards me. But with consciousness, I can identify that and thus not take it on, whereas it becomes a problem or something that I feel is out of my control. When you identify a lot with your ego aspect of who you are, that false self, then it creates things like suffering, pain, anxiety, depression even. Now, it's important to recognize consciousness along this journey to bring balance to the ego in recognizing that though the ego has its experiences, they are not the totality, they are not the truth of who you are. And so, yes, though the ego has its experiences and they are valid in their experiences, especially as you are here in this physical realm, they are not truly who you are. And so that allows you to let go of the suffering, anxiety, the perspective that you may have had in order to get through it, right? In order to go beyond it, in order for you to truly experience a personal self-fulfillment and a true self-realization as to who you truly are, which is consciousness. You see, that is the journey. This experience of being a human being here in this world is a expression, or you can even compare it to a game where you are experiencing a character, and that character has a backstory. And with all the information of your personal backstory, right, which is your character, you have to then decide and figure out, what are you going to do? How do you get to the ultimate goal and the objective of truly who you really are, right? Your consciousness. And so you have to be mindful about, yes, acknowledging the experiences you had growing up, acknowledging the education that you got from parents or guardians or family members, even recognizing the people you are close to now, the environments that you're in now, and recognizing and understanding that it is through your consciousness and being led by consciousness through you get to sift through, right, the issues and the distractions and the barriers that are actually causing you to be hesitant or procrastinate or even insecure about what you truly want, right? The things that you truly desire, the things that truly will bring you joy. But you must understand the nature of ego. And the nature of ego is ultimately to bring your balance and bring you to a space where you are grounded in this physical realm. Okay. It is a grounding mechanism. It is the thing that is tethering you to this reality that we are currently in. Now, when we transition, when we pass away and we move on from this realm, then things perhaps may be different. But as of right now, you are two things. You are consciousness and you are ego. You are on the journey of bringing them things into balance, managing your ego, not being led by the ego, but understanding that the ego has its place in keeping you protected, because that's its nature, right? Its nature is to create a separation or understanding that though, yes, consciousness says we are one, still we are in a physical space where people can harm me, where through my experiences in childhood, I can be triggered by, people who say a particular thing, do a particular thing that ignites my survival mechanism to essentially not feel pain and suffering, whether it be physical or even emotional and spiritual. So you have to recognize that the ego really is a defense mechanism. It is a survival tool for this world, because before we got to this point of evolution where we are essentially more safe than ever in existence, we were surviving. We were running away from lions and running away from each other, and really just trying to make it day and day and day to the next day. So it's important for you to understand that when you now recognize the ego and recognize that you are not the ego, but the ego is there to support you in this game of life, then you can move forward and be led by consciousness toward you, essentially creating the life that you desire. And that is your objective. That is your mission, to be a conscious creator and manage your ego, but focus on creating the things that will ignite your passions, that will allow you to be the person that you truly are and you're truly meant to be, taking the actions you're supposed to take. This is what manifests into personal fulfillment and joy. When you are being led by the ego, like most of us are, then you are living a life where you are coming from a place of fear. You're coming from a place of lack. You're coming from a place of feeling like you're not good enough, because that is the survival mode. That is the survival mechanism, you see. But consciousness, your true self, knows that you are all and everything, that there is nothing that you cannot do, create, or achieve. And so you must come to that understanding of balancing those two things. And really the balance looks more like you being led by consciousness, but also recognizing that in this physical world, there are things that you should be mindful about. And that's the key, being mindful, not being led by the ego, but be mindful of the things that the ego is bringing forth to you, right? To address, to think about, to consider. But with consciousness, you understand and you can decipher whether those things are absolutely true or not. And that is really what will set you apart from not only everybody else, but also from recognizing your past self, your present self, and your true self, which is the self that you are heading toward, the self that you are actually achieving or moving toward becoming. All right. So understand your ego is very important. It's grounded in your, upbringing, but it is essential. It is something that we all come with. And it is necessary because just like everything else in the universe, there is a contrast that exists. They must exist in order to truly bring balance to all that is. You must have two things that appear to be opposites, but really are two sides of the same experience, right? Two essential essences, two, expressions, all right, of the same thing, two sides of the spectrum. Now, your job is to be mindful of the ego. Recognize when it comes up. And it usually comes up when you experience and feel fear, anxiety, lack, insecurity. That is your ego speaking to you. When you're coming from a place of abundance, joy, being present in the moment, right? Recognizing your passions, recognizing your talents, usually those are coming from consciousness. And that is what you are to be led by. Whenever you feel fear, usually that is because the thing you fear is truly the thing you are supposed to do. So your ego is telling you, let's not do it because that is something new. But the fear is somewhat of a trick as to really what the ego is telling you to do. The ego wants you to be comfortable in being uncomfortable. It wants you to remain where you are because it is scared to move forward. It is scared to be managed also. Your job now is to recognize that, comfort the ego to a level, understand that the ego is not going anywhere, right? But also that it is through consciousness that yourself, your true self, can truly experience the state of mind, the state of being that will express itself through things like peace, joy, and happiness. I hope that helps. Thank you so much. Feel free, go to drabundant.com, subscribe to my daily newsletter, get access to this free ebook, The Power Within. Also, I invite you to join my Conscious Creator Circle. It is a paid membership, subscription-based service where you get access to more techniques, detailed information, coaching, weekly calls, things of that nature. All right. And it's going to really help you and open you up to truly creating the life that you want and being the person that you are meant to be. Continue to join me on this journey. Peace and abundance always.